Welcome to Amazing Dinosaurs. This is a collection of Jurassic World's best carnivore figures, and today we're setting them up from biggest to smallest. Our first and biggest carnivore is this super colossal Carnotaurus Toro figure. It's got the classic orange and brown body and the horns at the top of its head, along with the battle damage on its face. So we're gonna set this figure on the left side as our biggest figure and follow that up with another super colossal figure. Now this one is the Giganotosaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It has the green and black body and some really cool teeth. Now let's place that next in size next to the Carnotaurus. Our next big figure is the mighty Indominus Rex dinosaur. And this Indominus Rex comes with two features. First is the button on its tail that you can press for the chomping, and second is the button on its back for the claw slashing action. Now let's place this next in size in our carnivore line. Next in size is a figure that isn't tall, but it certainly is very large. This is the Mosasaurus figurine. It has an adjustable jaw, adjustable fins, and an adjustable tail. So now let's put that next in line as our next biggest carnivore. All right, check it out. We've got another Giganotosaurus figure, although this version is quite a bit smaller than the super colossal version. But this figure's got some pretty cool features that make up for it. First is the button on the tail that activates a huge torso swinging action. And second is a button underneath its tail to activate the chomping action. All right, now let's put that next in size. This next figure here is a pretty interesting one. This is a Pyroraptor, but it is actually battery operated and is an intelligent figure. Now that it's on, check out those glowing red eyes, and you can actually interact with it too by pressing on the top of its head here and underneath its chin too. So we're gonna place that next in size right next to the Giganotosaurus. And here is our first T-Rex figure of this carnivore collection. This is a classic brown T-Rex, and it has a button on the top of its head for the chomping action. All right, let's place that next in line. And here is another T-Rex. This one is a bit more gray with brown on the top compared to the more tan coloring of the previous one. And it has the fully posable body, even the neck can move around, and of course the button at the top of the head for the chomping action. And let's set that one up next in line next to the other T-Rex. And here is another T-Rex figure, but this one is part of the Legacy collection. So it's one of the few ones that come in the green coloring, which I really like. And of course it has the button on its head for the chomping action, just like the others. And we're gonna go ahead and set this next in line. Got three T-Rexes right next to each other. Next up for this carnivore collection is the Tarbosaurus figure. It's got some really cool spikes running all the way along its back, and you can use the tail to move the head around in a lifelike way. All right, let's set this next to the T-Rex figures. Quite a bit smaller, as you can see. Next up is a Scorpius Rex figure. I'm sure you recognize this one from the Jurassic World movies. Now this is the basic figure, so there is no action button, but you can still adjust the arms, the legs, and the tail. And I gotta say, this one is quite a scary predator. So let's place this next in line, next to the Tarbosaurus. Here I've got a Carnotaurus figure in the tan coloring with the orange and brown accenting. This figure has a ton of little spikes running along its back all the way up to its head, and it has a single action button on its back for a head chomping action. Now let's go ahead and set this up next in size. The next carnivore is this Spinosaurus figure, or at least that's how I think you pronounce it. This figure is from the Dino Tracker series. It has some massive spikes on its tail, as well as this little pack that it's wearing. And this figure has two action buttons. The first activates the spikes on its back. They actually move up and down. And the second button activates a head chomping action. Now it looks like we're out of room over here, so we're gonna start a new line all the way over here. The next figure from Jurassic World is this Sound Surge Carnotaurus figure. It has an all red body with a little bit of white on its chin and on its neck, and a single button on its back to activate the sound effects. Very cool, let's set this up next in line. Now here's another super scary carnivore figure from Jurassic World. This is the Indoraptor figure. It's got the black body with the gold striping, and this is a very intelligent carnivore species. So let's put this next in size in our carnivore line. This next figure is a pretty uncommon dinosaur. This is a Sinotyrannus figure, and this is also from the Dino Tracker series. You can see this headpiece and backpack that it's got, and you can see that there are two action buttons. The first one activates its head for a chomping action, and the second button activates the tail swinging action. And here we go, next in line. Here is an Allosaurus figure. I believe this one is from Camp Cretaceous. This Allosaurus is in the brown and blue coloring, and it has a slide lever action on its back for the sound effects and poses. That is very cool, so let's set this next in size. And now we've got a Baryonyx figure. This one is also in the brown and blue coloring, but it also has some reflective blue coloring right along the top of its head. Plus, it has a single action button on its back for the chomping action. And we're gonna set it down right next to the Allosaurus. This next figure is from the Hammond collection. This is the Ceratosaurus figure. It's got the yellow with brown striping and then the red that leads up to its all red face. So let's put this one right next to the Baryonyx figure. And next we've got an Amber collection Velociraptor figure. This one is in a really cool bright orange coloring with the brown striping, and like all Amber collection figures is super posable. And let's set that down right there. But let's not forget about the Dilophosaurus figures. These dinosaurs are some pretty scary carnivores. This figure has some adjustable frills that you can open and close, and I believe this one actually came out as part of the first Jurassic World movie, so it's pretty old. Now let's put that one right there. Now we've got another Hammond collection figure here. This one is an Irritator figure. I got this one pretty recently, and it's pretty cool. It's got the gray coloring over its body with the yellow striping and dotting, and it's got the black around its face, and finally the red on its crown. Pretty cool figure for the Hammond collection, and we're gonna put that next in size. And next up is another Velociraptor figure. This is Velociraptor Blue, but this one's pretty special because it is actually battery operated. And you can actually interact with it by pressing this button on the top of its head, or pressing underneath its chin. So now let's put that next in line. And I've also got an Atrociraptor version of that same figure, both with the same sound effects and with the ability to walk around. So let's put this next in line. Next up, it may not be tall, but it certainly is very long. This is a Pteranodon figure from the Amber collection. And this Pteranodon's pretty special because its wings are actually a rubber. So it is very flexible, just like a real wing would be. All right, now let's see if we can get that in line next to the Atrociraptor. And now we've got a Sarcosuchus figure in the blue, orange, red, and purple coloring. And best of all, you can use the tail and the button on the tail to move its head around in a really lifelike way. All right, let's get that next in line, next to the Pteranodon. And now it's time to open up this brand new figure from the Legacy collection. This is the Dr. Ellie Sattler Risky Rescue Pack. And here is this brand new set. First off, we've got a dark green Velociraptor that came as part of the set. And I think it's pretty much like the other Velociraptor figures I have. There's no attack button or anything like that, but it looks like you can open and close the mouth. And then we've got this awesome Jurassic Park Jeep with Dr. Ellie Sattler driving inside. And it looks like you can even open these bins in the back and store other material inside of it. So now let's go ahead and place these next in line. And we'll go ahead and put the Velociraptor in the car right next to Dr. Ellie Sattler. Better look out. Up next, we've got another Velociraptor figure, but this one is in a bright blue coloring, and it is actually a spring-loaded Velociraptor. So you can press down on its legs and then let it spring into the air. And we'll put this one right here. We'll start a new line in the front. And here's another one. This is also a spring-loaded Velociraptor, but this one is in a bright red and green coloring. And check out that spring-loaded action. And put this one right there. Next up is a Herrerasaurus figure. This one has a really long and narrow snout, and it's got the all green body with a little bit of blue on the top. So let's go ahead and put this one next in line. And here is our next one. This one is actually a juvenile or baby Tyrannosaurus Rex. So it is quite small, but it actually still has an attack feature that when you press down on its tail, it has a chomping action. That's pretty cool. So now let's place that next to the Herrerasaurus. All right, now we're getting down to the really small ones. This is a Snap Squad Carnotaurus figure. You can see the horns on the top of its head and the battle damage that's right on its nose. So let's place that one right next to the juvenile T-Rex, and look at the size difference even there. And next, we've actually got a Velociraptor Beta figure. Quite small, but it still has the iconic blue stripe, just like Velociraptor Blue. And we'll set Velociraptor Beta down next in line. Next up is a miniature Spinosaurus figure in the gray and green coloring, and this figure is so small that you actually can't move any of its body parts. And we'll set it up right there in line. And for our final figure in the collection is this miniature Baryonyx figure that I think was released for part of Jurassic World Dominion. So now let's go ahead and place that as the final carnivore in this collection. First and largest figure is this super colossal Carnotaurus Toro figure. It has the dark orange body with the brown coloring on top, tons of little spikes, and the huge horns on its head. Next up in size is this super colossal Velociraptor blue figure. This figure features the classic blue stripe down the side, and has fully posable arms, legs, and a jaw too. Next up in size is another Velociraptor blue figure, but this one is a bit different. This figure is battery operated, so let's see what happens when we turn it on. That is pretty cool. It blinks and its eyes move, and it even has sound effects. Moving on to the next in size, let's go with this custom colored Spinosaurus figure. This figure features way more intricate and cool coloring than the original Mattel figure featured. It features posable arms, legs, and a tail, and even the neck and the jaw. Let's set this figure down next to the robotic Velociraptor blue figure. Next up, why don't we go with this Terran T-Rex figure. This T-Rex has some of the classic brown and tan coloring, and best of all, it features an awesome tearing feature when you press the button on its back. Look at that jaw chomping action. And we're gonna set this down as the next biggest dinosaur in this carnivore collection. Over here is another Terran T-Rex, but this one was actually custom colored. Let's set them down side by side so we can see the color differences. This one is a lot darker, and it actually has a lot more battle damage painted all over its body. And look at that, even some more battle damage on the other side. That is really cool. Let's set this down next in line. For the next in size, we're gonna go with this camouflage T-Rex figure. This is one of my favorite custom colored dinosaurs because of this really cool green camo color that has all over its body. And this figure has a chomping action when you move its tail, and a roaring action too. This figure is super cool, so let's set this as the next biggest dinosaur. For the next biggest carnivore figure, we're gonna go with this Camp Cretaceous Epic Roarin' T-Rex. This figure has the classic tan body, and it features a button on its tail for a roaring and chomping action. This one is definitely cool, so let's set this down next in size. Looks like we've got a few more T-Rex figures in here. Here is another green T-Rex, but this one isn't custom colored. This is actually how it came. It's got some black detailing along the top of its head, and it has a button on the top of its head for the chomping and roaring action. Plus, its arms and legs and tail and neck are fully posable, just like many of these other T-Rex figures. All right, here might be one of my last T-Rex figures in this carnivore collection. This one is the classic bright orange, and it features opposable arms, legs, tail, neck, and jaw too. Why don't we dig into this one next? This is part of the new Epic Attack series from Jurassic World. This is the battle chomping Carnotaurus. And here it is. It looks like it has 3 different action buttons on this Carnotaurus figure. The first 2 are light and sound effect buttons that you can push for different sounds. So depending on how many times you press these buttons, it has different sound effects. And the third button is a classic chomping action button. The color and texturing design is pretty similar to the older Carnotaurus figures. It's mostly that clay red orange color. It has some brown detailing throughout, and of course it's got the bright yellow eyes. Overall, this figure is pretty cool. I love the fact that there are different sound effects and different battle damage buttons. All right, let's set this next in line as the next largest carnivore figure. Over here, we've got the Scorpius Rex figure from Camp Cretaceous. And it has 2 action buttons on its back. The first operates the jaw with the sound effects. And the second button on its back activates the claws for a slashing action. That is pretty cool, and it is quite a large figure. And it is the next in size. For our next one, let's grab this classic Endoraptor figure. This is the Grab and Growl Endoraptor, and it is pretty hard to find online nowadays. I don't think they're making this one anymore. It's got 1 button on the top of its tail for the claw slashing action, and another button on the bottom of its tail for a jaw chomping action. All right, this figure is pretty awesome. So let's set this next in line as the next biggest. Over here, I've got another Carnotaurus figure, but this one is quite a bit older. I think this one came out for the second Jurassic World movie, which was Fallen Kingdom. As you can see, they're a slightly different red color, and this figure is a little bit smaller than that one as well. But it still has 1 button on its back for the chomping action. Very cool. All right, let's set this down. This next figure is really long, but it's actually a little bit shorter than the Carnotaurus figure, which is why it's next in line. This, I believe, was called the Ocean Protector Mosasaurus figure. You can move all of its fins, and its jaw opens and closes too. All right, let's keep going. Let's go with this Jurassic Park juvenile T-Rex figure. This figure is quite old. You can see the JP tattoo on its leg. It's got some battle damage on its side as well. Let's set this one down next in line. For the next figure, why don't we go with another old figure? This is from Jurassic Park 3, and I believe this dinosaur is a velociraptor. And it used to be battery operated, but sadly it doesn't work anymore. But it's still a really cool figure, so let's set this down next to the T-Rex. Up next for scary carnivores, we've got a Suchomimus figure. This version is the dark blue with the yellow spine, and it has 1 button on its back for the chomping action. And let's set this down next in line right here. For the next in size, let's see, I think we should go with the Sound Surge dinosaurs. This first one is the Giganotosaurus Sound Surge. Let's check out those sound effects. Very cool. Let's set this down next to the Suchomimus. The other Sound Surge dinosaur in this carnivore collection is the Sound Surge Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now let's hear the sound effects for this figure. And we're gonna set it down right next to the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus. Next up is this Rowdy Roars Carnotaurus figure. It is the classic clay red and orange coloring with the brown on top. It's got a little battle damage on its nose too. Compared to the Epic Attack figure, this one is a whole lot smaller and is a little bit brighter, and of course has much larger eyes. All right, let's set this down next to the T-Rex. The next in size is this Cryolophosaurus figure. This version has the dark blue body with the white and orange on the top. And this figure comes with sound effects, and when you move the tail, it controls the head. All right, let's set this down next to the Carnotaurus. Up next, we've got a Baryonyx figure. I think this one might be a Camp Cretaceous Baryonyx. And it's got the slide lever action on its back for different roars and sound effects. So let's set this up next in line. I've also got a custom Hammond Collection Spinosaurus figure. It has the red running along its back and on its face, and it's got the blue, brown, and red spine, which is actually pretty similar to this other custom colored Spinosaurus figure that I have in the front. So we're gonna set this one down next in line. Over here is the Hammond Collection Baryonyx figure. It's got pretty similar coloring as this Camp Cretaceous Baryonyx figure right here. It's even got a little bit of that reflective blue coloring on its face. And let's set this one down right at the very end right here. Next up is not a dinosaur, but is actually an Owen figure from Jurassic World. This figure has the classic brown vest with the blue shirt underneath. And we're running out of room at the end of the table, so I'm gonna start a new line right up here in front. For the next in size is this Dilophosaurus figure. I believe this Dilophosaurus came out for the first Jurassic World movie and is not made by Mattel, but actually I think it's made by Hasbro. And it even has an action that when you press down on its tail, it moves its neck up and down. let's go ahead and grab this little Velociraptor blue figure. Now this figure is actually motorized, so when you press the top of its head, it comes with sound effects and chomping motions. And now we finally get to open this other new figure. This is the Epic Attack Dilophosaurus figure. Now it looks like this Dilophosaurus figure has one button on its side, and it looks like it is for the sound effects and light. And I think it actually comes with a few different sound effects too. Let's press it again. That's pretty cool. It's like a strobing light when you press it. It looks like its legs and arms are posable, and you can open and close its mouth manually, but sadly you can't move the frills at all, so you can't bring them forward, which is a bit of a bummer if you ask me, but it is a pretty cool design. So let's set this Dilophosaurus down next to Velociraptor Blue. All right, we've only got a few small figures left. I've got two Atrociraptor figures right here. This first Atrociraptor is in the classic white and tan coloring, and this other Atrociraptor figure that I bought more recently is brighter colored. It's got some red on its arms, its neck, and its chin. And we're gonna set these two up next in line. Over here, I've got another Dilophosaurus figure, quite a bit smaller. They're both green and they have some yellow, orange, and red detailing along their frills. But this figure is actually pretty cool because you can press on the tail to activate its frills. That is really cool. Up next is another Velociraptor figure, but this is a slashing Velociraptor. That means that its torso is actually spring-loaded, so you can swing it side to side for a slashing action. And let's put this one right here. I've got another raptor over here. This one is a Pyroraptor figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the feathers all over its body and the especially large feathers on the top of its head. And let's set this raptor down next in line. And now we're on to the really small figures over here. First up is a Baryonyx with the dark brown and blue coloring. And you can open and close its jaw too. Next up is a stalking Endoraptor figure with the gold stripe running down its side. Up next is a teeny tiny Mosasaurus figure. Look how small it is in comparison to this giant figure right there. But you can still open and close its mouth, which is pretty cool. And finally, I've got a tiny Pteranodon figure with some brown detailing on its wings, on its back, and on its horn. So let's get started with the biggest one, this super colossal custom colored T-Rex. This T-Rex has some fiery red coloring and is one of the brightest super colossal figures that I have. So let's put this at the very end as our biggest. And I've got another super colossal figure in this collection. This one is the Giganotosaurus. This figure has some reflective gold eyes and some of my favorite teeth on any Jurassic World figure. The next largest carnivore in this collection is this custom colored Indominus Rex. Just like this super colossal T-Rex over there, this one is colored super bright and very artistically rather than realistically. So let's set this down next in line. Next up, I've got another Indominus Rex figure, but this one is colored a lot more realistically. And this one is actually the original coloring of this custom painted one right over here. So they are actually identical in size. Next up is one of the coolest carnivores that I have. This is the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex. This figure came out pretty recently, and this carnivore is one of my favorites because of how posable it is and how much more detail there is to its entire body. Next up is another Giganotosaurus figure. This one is nearly identical to the super colossal Giganotosaurus in its color and its details, but this figure actually has a few features. The first is a torso swinging action, and the second is a jaw chomping action. So let's set it down next in line. This next one is a T-Rex figure. This is actually a Terran T-Rex. Check it out, it's got 2 buttons on its back. The first activates the Terran action, and the second button swings its double jointed tail. This is a pretty massive T-Rex figure, so let's set this next in line. I've got another T-Rex right over here. This one is the Camp Cretaceous T-Rex. It's got some pretty realistic coloring all over its body, and it's got a button on its tail to activate the jaw with sound effects and roaring. All right, let's get this one next in line. Let's see here, the next one in size might actually be this brand new one right over here. This is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex. Let's check it out. So this Indominus Rex is quite a bit smaller than the one that we saw earlier. Check out the size difference here. It has similar coloring though. And the best part, of course, are the sound effects. Moving on to the next biggest carnivore, I think is this Giganotosaurus figure. And instead of sound effects on this figure, it has a button on its tail to activate the jaw. Check it out, I've actually got another Sound Surge dinosaur in here. This is the Carnotaurus edition. And let's check out those sound effects too. Very cool, let's set this down next in line. This figure right here is a newer figure. I believe it's called the Nanotyrannus. And it's got 2 buttons hidden on its back. The first one activates its jaw, and the second one activates the tail. Next is another recently released dinosaur. This is the Eocarcharia. It's got the feather texturing all over its body and an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This figure was released as part of Jurassic World Dominion. This is a Scorpiovenator. It's got some pretty bright coloring, and it's got an action where you press down on its back and it chomps. Next, from Camp Cretaceous, we've got the Scorpius Rex. This actually isn't the largest Scorpius Rex that I have, but it has some really cool dark green coloring and a yellow underbelly, and fully adjustable arms, legs, tail, and head too. Way over here on the end, I've got the Ichthyovenator dinosaur. It's got the long, narrow snout, it's got the spine on its back, and it has the chomping action when you press down on its body. Here's another dinosaur that I bought recently. If I remember correctly, this is called a Dryptosaurus, or something very close to that. It's got spikes all over its body, a little bit of bright blue on its face, and an action button on its back to activate its jaws. Let's set that down right next to the Ichthyovenator. Next up is a pretty vintage and hard to find Jurassic Park Allosaurus figure. This figure is pretty cool because it actually has battle damage that you can take off completely to reveal the insides. And I think this one is the next biggest, so let's put this next in line. Next in size, we've got the Hammond Collection Baryonyx figure. I've got tons of Baryonyx figures, but this one is probably one of my favorite because of how adjustable and posable it is. So let's start a new line right up here as the next in size. Over here, we've got an older Ceratosaurus figure. This one is the brown and orange version, and it's got the action button on its back to activate the jaw. Let's set this down right next to the Baryonyx. Over here is a crazy looking figure. This is the Rowdy Roars Dilophosaurus. Let's go ahead and turn on the power, and let's see what it does. So you can touch the button on its head, or you can tap its chin, and it'll walk around. This one right next to it is the Majungasaurus. It's got some bright detailing running along its neck and its head, and with this figure you can use the tail to move the head around in a real lifelike way. And finally, for this carnivore biggest to smallest collection is a Sarcosuchus figure. It's got the long narrow snout, and there's a button on its tail to open and close its mouth too. figure is absolutely massive. It is larger than a lot of my T-Rex figures, and this is actually the Battle Damage edition. See, it turns red when you press the button, which is really cool. Plus, the rest of the body is very adjustable. You can move all its arms, its legs, you can adjust its neck, and it even has a button on its tail to activate the jaw. So let's go ahead and set the Indominus Rex down at the edge right over here. Moving on, let's see what the next largest dinosaur is. Probably the Giganotosaurus. This is another super large figure. It's got the green body with the black detailing all over, and it has a few actions actually as well. The first action is a button on the top of its tail that activates the swinging action with its entire upper torso. And there's also a button beneath its tail to activate just the jaw alone. All right, let's put this Giganotosaurus down right next to the Indominus Rex. And look at the size difference even between those two as well. That's pretty crazy. All right, next up, let's see. I bet it's one of the T-Rexes, and it's probably the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This figure has some awesome coloring and shading and is the most posable out of basically all my T-Rex figures. And an interesting feature of the Hammond Collection is the realistic parts of its mouth. It's got these flaps on its side that are rubber, so they actually move around pretty realistically. The tongue is also rubberized as well. Let's put this Hammond Collection T-Rex right next to the Giganotosaurus. All right, I bet the next biggest one is this other T-Rex figure. This is a Jurassic World Dominion T-Rex. It's got some brand new coloring. It's got the orange-brown color and some gray detailing on the top. And this is actually an extreme battle damage T-Rex. You can press the button to reveal the damage on its side, just like that Indominus Rex over there. So, since this is the next biggest T-Rex, let's put it down right next to the Hammond Collection T-Rex. All right, looking pretty good so far. Next up in size is this Allosaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. This is the largest Allosaurus figure that I have, and it actually has some battle damage on the side. Let me show you that. Right here, you see it's hidden completely right now, but then you can click it down to reveal the ribs, and then you can even lift those up to reveal the intestines inside. This is really cool, and the only Allosaurus that I have that can do that. Plus, it has an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Let's put this Allosaurus down right next to the extreme battle damage T-Rex. Let's see, what's next biggest in size? I think it might be this Indoraptor right here. This thing's pretty large. It's got the all black body with the iconic gold stripe down its side. And this one actually has a few actions. You can see there's a little button on its tail right there to activate its arms. And there's a button at the bottom of its tail to activate its jaw too. All right, let's set this Indoraptor down next to the Allosaurus. That Allosaurus is quite a bit larger. All right, let's keep digging. I think this Carnotaurus might be the next largest size. It's got some battle damage on its nose, and it is the darker brown version of the Carnotaurus. And it has the action button on its tail to activate the jaw as well. Let's set it down. You know what? I think it might be larger than the Indoraptor, so let's go ahead and have them switch places real quick. There we go. That's looking better. Over here, we've got another Carnotaurus figure, but this one is smaller than the one that I just showed you, and it is a bit more brightly colored. It's a brighter red, it has the light underbelly, and then the black detailing on the top, and it has an action button on its back instead of its tail to activate the jaw. All right, let's set it down right next to the Indoraptor. Let's see, I think the next biggest carnivore in this collection is a Tarbosaurus. And this is definitely a scary looking carnivore. Check out that red underneath its chin and those red eyes too. And all those spikes, those are massive. Let's put this down right next to the Carnotaurus. Check out all those dinosaurs we have so far. Super cool. All right, let's see, next in size, maybe this other Allosaurus figure right here. This Allosaurus has a slide lever action on its back, so you get a bunch of different sound effects with it. You can get a growl all the way to a roar. All right, let's set this dinosaur down right next to the Tarbosaurus. And it is quite a bit smaller than the Tarbosaurus. Next up, I think, is the Giganotosaurus. This is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus, so a whole lot smaller than the one that we saw earlier, but it has the same coloring and detailing, and it has sound effects that you can hear that you can activate by pressing this button up top. All right, let's set it down right next to the Allosaurus. They're actually pretty similar in size, so it might be a little hard to tell who's larger, but I think it's still the Allosaurus. Next, I think, is a Pyroraptor figure. This is the new Jurassic World Dominion version, and it is the basic version as well, so you can't open and close the jaw, but you can move the arms, the legs, and the tail a bit. Let's set this down right next to the smaller Giganotosaurus figure. Next up in size in the Scary Carnivore collection is the Megaraptor. This thing has some super bright coloring. You can tell that it is a feathered dinosaur. You can see some feathers on its legs, on its tail, on its arms. It's pretty cool. So let's set this down right next to the Megaraptor. Next up is this slightly smaller Endoraptor, a bit smaller than the earlier version that we saw, but it has the same coloring, and this one actually does not have any action buttons, but it is superposable. Let's put this down next to the Megaraptor. Next in size, we've got the basic Atrociraptor figure from Jurassic World Dominion. This has the white body with the brown striping all over and those bright red eyes. Let's put this down next to the smaller Endoraptor. Here is an Amber Collection Velociraptor. I can't remember which Velociraptor this is, but it has the brown coloring with the darker striping all over its body. Looks like we're running out of room on the edge there, so we're gonna create a new row right up in front here. Next is this much smaller Indominus Rex figure. This is an earlier version of the Indominus Rex compared to this one way over here on the edge, and look at that size difference too. And actually, I think this smaller Indominus Rex has a slightly more blue tone than the super large one. It's pretty cool. Let's put this down right next to the Amber Collection Velociraptor. For the next smallest scary carnivore, I've actually got this brand new one from Jurassic World Dominion. This one I believe is pronounced Carnotaurus. Let's open it up. So this is a pretty interesting looking dinosaur, and it's actually an extreme battle damage edition that you can see on the sides. Just click this button, and there you go, you reveal the damage underneath. Plus, you can pose its neck, and I think you can even open and close its mouth too. There we go. That's pretty cool. Let's put this down next to the Indominus Rex. The next up in size of scary carnivores is this extreme battle damage Pyroraptor. Just like the dinosaur that we just saw, there's a button on top that activates the battle damage. Plus, the rest of its body is posable as well. And check out the size difference from this Pyroraptor to this basic Pyroraptor right there. A huge difference in size. Let's put it down right up front here. All right, now we're getting down to the really small ones. Here is a super small Atrociraptor figure. It has the same color as the basic Atrociraptor that we saw earlier, but is a whole lot smaller. So let's put this right next to the Pyroraptor. And I've actually got one more Atrociraptor figure in here with totally different coloring. This one is a bright orange with tan stripes on its body, and it's got some yellow, evil looking eyes. So let's put this right next to the smaller Atrociraptor right in front. And it looks like we've got a few Velociraptor figures in here. This first one is Velociraptor Blue with the iconic blue striping down both sides of its body. So let's put Velociraptor Blue right next to the orange Atrociraptor. And this other Velociraptor that I've got in here is a brown and yellow Velociraptor. It's pretty similar to Velociraptor Blue, but different coloring, and it's got some reflective green eyes. That's pretty cool. Let's set this one down. And finally, I've got some super small Jurassic World scary carnivore figures in here. Let's put these on the table and check them out one by one. I think the first largest is probably this Baryonyx. I think it's a Baryonyx figure. It's all green in color, so not a whole lot of difference with the coloring, but it's got a decent amount of texturing. Let's put this next to the larger Velociraptor. Next up in size, let's see, I think is probably this Velociraptor figure. This one has two different colors on it, even though it's so small. Oh no, actually three. It's got a pink tongue and the two tones of gray on its body. That's pretty cool. Let's put it down next to the Baryonyx.
Next up is the Carnotaurus figure. I got this one pretty recently in a pack, and you can actually open and close its mouth. Let's set this one down here. And last of all is this Baryonyx figure that actually came in the same pack as this little Carnotaurus. Let's put them side by side, and it is a bit smaller. All right, we're finished.
Start with the biggest figures over here. I think the largest one is this Jurassic World Dominion Brachiosaurus figure. This Dominion version has an updated paint design on its back and on its neck, and the reflective blue on its head. And since it's the biggest, we're gonna place this on the furthest left and go for the next biggest, which I think is this giant Dreadnoughtus figure. Now this figure is seriously ridiculously long. It's probably maybe even 4 feet long from the tip of its head all the way to the tail, and has a pretty cool blue and orange paint design too. So let's grab this and put this next in line as the next largest dinosaur right here. And we're gonna grab the next giant figure, which is a Jurassic World Apatosaurus figure. Now this figure is still pretty long compared to a lot of these smaller figures, but compared to the Dreadnoughtus figure right next to it, see how much longer its neck is? It is definitely a whole lot smaller. Now that we've got the 3 biggest set up, let's go for the next biggest one, which I think is this Brachiosaurus figure right here. This figure is a whole lot smaller than these giant ones right here, but it's still a pretty good size. It's probably a foot tall. It has some really cool coloring and texturing too. So let's set this next in line as the next largest quadrupedal dinosaur and move on to the next one, which I think is this dinosaur right here. This is an Amargosaurus dinosaur from Jurassic World. It's pretty unique because it has these 2 giant frills going down all the way from its neck to its tail. And it has 2 action buttons. One swings its neck up and down, and the second swings its tail back and forth. We've got a lot of long-necked quadrupedal dinosaurs in here so far. The next in size, I think, might be this one, and this is a brand new one that I bought. This is the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary Cretaceous figure. And here it is out of the box, and it is quite a sizable figure. This, of course, is from the Hammond collection. I don't know that I have another Cretaceous figure in my collection, so this is pretty neat. It's got some yellow, gray, black, and it's got a real big crown on the top of its head. And of course, it is very adjustable, as many of the Hammond collection figures are. So let's get this next in line. The next quadrupedal dinosaur for this collection is this gray and blue Stegosaurus figure. This is a classic figure made by Mattel for Jurassic World, and it's got a single hidden action button on its back to swing the tail back and forth. And we'll set it down next in line. For the next one, we're gonna go with another Stegosaurus figure. This Jurassic World figure looks pretty identical in shape and size to this gray-blue Stegosaurus, but of course it has totally different coloring, and it has a totally different action button as well. You can press on these 2 spines right here, and it'll swing its entire torso back and forth. That's pretty cool, and I do think I like it better than the action button on this one. Next up, I've got a vintage figure from Jurassic Park. This is the Triceratops figure, numbered JP08. And like many of the figures from the Jurassic Park era, it has the real feel skin, so instead of a hard plastic, like many of the new Jurassic World figures, it has a soft, rubbery skin over almost its entire body. And when you press down on the stomach, it actually has an action where it lifts up its head too. Now let's set it down next in size. I think it's just a little bit shorter than the Stegosaurus figures. For the next quadrupedal dinosaur, we're gonna go with the Diabloceratops figure from the Dino Trackers collection. This cool dinosaur has a fiery red color over its whole body with some tan underneath. And the coolest part are these 4 gigantic horns on the front of its head. And there's an action button for the sound effects and attack button. Now let's set it down next in line, next to the Jurassic Park Triceratops figure. Look at that size difference. Looks like there's some Triceratops figures in this collection, and these are probably one of the most popular quadrupedal dinosaurs. This Triceratops figure comes in the gray coloring with a little bit of dark detailing along the top, and has two action buttons, one for the head and one for the tail. And let's put that right next to the Diabloceratops. This next Triceratops figure is actually one that I custom painted myself. It also has a mostly gray color with a bit of gray detailing along the top of its body, but one of my favorite parts are the red coloring along its frill and its bright green eyes too. And overall, I'm really happy with the job that I did on painting this dinosaur. And here's one more Triceratops figure for this quadrupedal collection. This one is a dark green color. It has some brown detailing along the top and an attack feature that when you press down on its back, it lifts up its head. Let's keep on going with these four-legged dinosaurs. This next one is another new figure from the Dino Trackers series. This is the Nigersaurus, and it has mostly green coloring over its whole body and an action button on its back to swing the neck back and forth. And I think I actually got to bump this up in line because it's a little bit taller than many of these Triceratops figures. So we're gonna put it right here. Next up is another vintage figure. This is the Jurassic Park Amargospinus figure, which I believe is actually a hybrid dinosaur. This figure has some of the brightest coloring that I've seen, and it has a pretty cool feature. When you move the leg on this figure, it actually lifts up the spikes on its back, the spikes on its neck, and it opens its mouth too. And although the head of the Amargospinus is a bit taller than the Triceratops, its body is a little bit shorter, so we're gonna put it next in line. Next up is another vintage figure from Jurassic Park. This one, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was called the Chasmosaurus or something like that. It looks quite a bit like a Triceratops. It has the huge frill in the front and some horns on its head too. And like the Amargospinus we saw, if you move the leg on this figure, it lifts its head up for a similar attack action. And check it out, the sound effects still work on this super old figure. Now let's set that up next in line here. For the next figure, I think we'll go with this smaller Parasaurolophus figure. This figure is from Jurassic World Dominion, so it's a newer figure, and it has some bright blue and orange accenting on the top of its body. So let's set that down right here. And now I think it's time to open this huge Jurassic Park 93 Classic Track and Explore vehicle set. All right, now let's check out this new set. We'll first check out the car. You can open and close the doors. It has this protector for the windshield right here that you can bring down so nothing breaks the glass when you're hunting dinosaurs. It also has a turret coming out of the back of the truck. And I don't think I've seen this color design before. It's got the soft blue coloring with the yellow on the bottom, but it still has the Jurassic Park logo right on the side. And it also comes with this little lasso for hunting dinosaurs. And here is the dinosaur that comes in the set. This is the, I think it's pronounced Scutosaurus or Scutosaurus. It's a bright orange dinosaur. It looks pretty bulky. It has a huge torso. Its two front legs are white and the two back are orange like the rest of its body. And it looks like it doesn't have any action buttons, but you can adjust the neck and the head, and you can move the legs around too. So let's get all of this next in line. For the next biggest, we're gonna go with this figure from the Dino Trackers series. This is the Gigant Spinosaurus. This figure has some similar orange coloring to the figure that we just saw, and its back is a tan color. But the coolest part are these huge spikes that it's got coming out of its shoulders, and then all the spines running down to its tail. Now let's put that next in line and grab our next dinosaur. Now let's grab this big old Sarcosuchus figure. Now this is another special figure to me because I custom painted this one as well. So originally I think it came in a purple and gray coloring, but I changed it to this camo green with the brown on top and some brighter green along the bottom too. And I think it looks pretty awesome. Next, I'm gonna grab this Ankylosaurus figure right here in the blue and yellow coloring. This is a pretty large Ankylosaurus figure, and I really love the spikes that come off the sides. Plus, there is an action button on its back for swinging its tail. I think next I'm gonna grab this other Ankylosaurus figure. This one is actually from the first Jurassic World movie, so this one is made by Hasbro, as opposed to Mattel for many of these other figures. But it has an attack that when you move its leg, it swings its tail, and it can move its head back and forth too. I'll set that right there, and let's grab our next one, which I think could be this one right here. I believe this dinosaur is called the Styracosaurus. And this one has some pretty cool coloring right on its frill, bright yellow and orange. It's got a ton of spikes all over. And all in all, it's a pretty cool figure. Pretty similar to that one is this Dino Tracker's Zuniceratops figure. It too has a large frill in the front, and it's got some horns, although not anywhere near as many. But it does have an action button on its back to lift up its head for stabbing and attacking. So let's put that next in size. Next up is another new figure. This is the Jurassic World Dominion Nasutoceratops figure. Now let's go ahead and open it up and check it out. Now this, I believe, is the juvenile version. I do have the adult version if you've checked out my other videos. And this little figure has some little horns coming out of its head and dark coloring around its body overall. And we're gonna put that right next to the Zuniceratops. Now let's grab our second to last figure. This is a baby Ankylosaurus figure with very similar coloring as the adult figure right over here. It's got the blue and the yellow underbelly. And this figure specifically is actually Ankylosaurus Bumpy. We're gonna put it right there. And for our final figure, this weird looking dinosaur is the Nothosaurus dinosaur. As you can see, its body stays really close to the ground, although it's technically standing on all four legs. It has this really long neck and a long and narrow snout with a bunch of nasty looking teeth. Now let's put that on the very end of the line as our final and smallest dinosaur. Now starting with one of the largest herbivore figures that I have is this new Jurassic World Dominion Brachiosaurus figure. Now Mattel did have an older Brachiosaurus figure, but this is the Jurassic World Dominion one, so it has some new painting on top of its head as well as on its back. So let's put this huge herbivore as the tallest in this collection. The next up in size is a dinosaur that looks pretty similar to the Brachiosaurus. And this figure is also from Jurassic World Dominion. This is an Apatosaurus. Compared to the Brachiosaurus, you can see that it's a little bit smaller and its neck is a lot shorter than the Brachiosaurus, but it is still the next in size. All right, what's next? Let's see what we got here. Let's go with the Stegosaurus. This is the green, tan, and brown version. And it has this attack button to swing its tail and back torso back and forth. This figure is a lot smaller, but it is next in size compared to the Apatosaurus. Right over here is the Pentaceratops herbivore figure. This dinosaur has 3 big horns on its head and a huge frill, much larger compared to a Triceratops, I think. And it has 2 action buttons, one for swinging the head up and down, and one for spinning the torso back and forth. And let's put it right there next to the Stegosaurus. Next, we're gonna go with this long-necked dinosaur. It kind of looks like an Apatosaurus. Well, I'm not sure. It might actually be a Brachiosaurus. What do you think? But either way, it is next in size, so let's put it next to the Pentaceratops. Up next is this Parasaurolophus from the Hammond collection. It's got the light tan body with the orange and purple and white striping along its back, and like all Hammond collection figures, is very posable. Now let's set it next in line. I've got another Parasaurolophus over here in this collection. This is actually a Jurassic Park Parasaurolophus. Standing them side by side, you can see the similarities. Both of them have that purple striping, but the Hammond collection has the orange on its back, and this one is a lot lighter colored. And it looks like this Parasaurolophus actually stands a bit taller, so let's go ahead and switch places. Let's go ahead and grab these Triceratops now. This is a dark brown version with the blue spotting on the top of its body. And this Triceratops has a feature that when you move its tail, it moves its head around with sound effects. All right, let's put that in next in size. Here's this next Triceratops figure, but this one is in a camo green color with the brown detailing on the top and on its frill too. Now on this figure, the tail does not control the head, but you can press down on the body for some sound effects and a striking action. Let's put that down right next to the other Triceratops. Here's a similar dinosaur. This is a Spinosaurus. It's got a green body similar to the previous Triceratops, but it does not have any huge horns coming out of its head other than these little ones right here, and then these ones on the top. And this figure has a single action button for the roaring and striking attack. Now it's time for one of my new figures. It's this one in this box that I bought off of eBay. It is a custom colored Sinoceratops. Now check that out. That has some pretty different coloring. Let's place them side by side so we can see the difference here. This one's got some bright purple, where the other has some orange on it. Also, its entire body is now a brown color with some tan all over. And it has these black patches on its back compared to the tan striping on the original. That is pretty cool. Which coloring do you like more? Let me know in the comments, the original or the custom painted. Now let's grab this dinosaur with spikes all over it. This, I believe, is a Carnotaurus. It looks pretty similar to a Stegosaurus because it's got all these spines running along its back, but it also has these huge spikes coming out of its shoulders, and it's got a ton more spikes in the back here. Plus, there is a slide lever action for swinging those huge spikes back and forth. And you know what? I think this one is actually a little bit bigger than the rest of these, so let's move it up in line. Next up, I've got a Triceratops looking dinosaur, but I don't think this is actually a Triceratops. You can see it's got the 3 horns in the front, but it also has all these horns in the back. It might be a Styracosaurus or something like that, but let me know in the comments if you know what type this is. All right, time for another new figure. This is the Dino Tracker's Nigersaurus. And here it is out of the box. This is another herbivore that has a very long neck and stands on 4 legs. It looks like it has 2 different tones of green, the bright green here, and then the dark green along the back half of its body. It's got pretty typical texturing and detailing. You can see some little horns there, and then the scaly skin texture over most of its body. And it looks like, actually, in its mouth, it's not painted, which is kind of a disappointment. But on its back, it still has this swivel action button for different sound effects and movements. That's pretty cool. It's definitely a unique looking dinosaur. So now let's put it next in line. Next up, looks like we've got another Parasaurolophus, but this one's quite a bit different looking. It has a tan and black body, but the coolest part is it's got this white all over its face and then the bright red horn on the top of its head. And it's got a single action button on its back to move its head. So let's set that down next in size. Here's another super old figure. This, I believe, is called a Chasmosaurus. This is actually from Jurassic Park. So it looks pretty similar to a Triceratops, but it has 3 small horns on its head and a much larger frill. And this figure has an attack button when you move its leg. And there we go. Next, let's go with another brand new figure. This is the Dino Tracker's Gigant Spinosaurus figure. Here it is unboxed. It is a pretty bright dinosaur. It's got the bright orange on the front and the tan in the back. It kind of looks like a Sauropelta with these huge spikes coming out of its shoulders. And it's got pretty typical texturing as well. You can see all those bumps along its skin, but there's not too much going on with the coloring. It basically looks like there are just 3 main colors: the green in the back, the white for its horns and spines, and then the orange in the front. But this figure does have an attack that when you move its head back and forth, it actually swings its tail back and forth a little bit. All right, let's set this down next in size. Next, we're gonna go with this Ankylosaurus figure right here. This one is in the brown with tan stripes and the red bottom. It features an attack button when you press down on its body. It moves its tail, and it has posable legs and a head too. So let's set this down next in size. And I think this actually might be a little larger than this one. So we're going to have them switch places. Next up, we're going with another vintage figure. This is the Jurassic Park baby Triceratops figure. It's got the camo green body with some darker coloring along the top, and when you move the leg, it has a striking action. Next, we're gonna go with this figure. This, I believe, is the Styracosaurus. It's got a ton of horns along its frill, and it's got a very natural green and brown coloring with some brighter coloring in the front, and it has an attack that when you move its tail, it swings its head up and down. All right, let's put that next in line. Here is a smaller Brachiosaurus figure, smaller than the huge one that we saw at the beginning. It's got the mostly brown body with these orange spots all over. Looks like it has some darker detailing along the top of its back, and it actually looks like it's standing a little bit taller than some of these other figures, so we're gonna push it up to the front over here. Next, we're actually gonna go with another Brachiosaurus figure, but this is a new figure from the Dino Trackers series. So let's open it up. So this baby Brachiosaurus looks pretty similar to older figures of baby Brachiosauruses that I have, but it just has totally new coloring. This one is in the all brown coloring with some tan detailing along its back and a little bit of tan detailing right along its face. And it features a posable jaw, neck, and legs. Next, we're gonna go with this herbivore that stands on two legs. This is a Gallimimus figure, and it comes in the tan with dark brown coloring along the top. So we're gonna set this figure here next in line, and we actually have another Gallimimus figure right here in this collection. This one has slightly darker coloring. It's almost orange, and it has a darker brown striping along the top. But other than that, they look pretty identical. And next, let's go ahead and open up this other Dino Trackers new figure. This is the Strike Attack Zuniceratops. This dinosaur figure has some pretty naturalistic coloring with the brown and the tan, and then the darker brown along its neck. So it looks very realistic. And it looks like its legs and its arms are posable, and there's an action button on its back to swing its head up and down. Next, let's go with this herbivore. This is another one that stands on two legs. This one is a Dracorex dinosaur, and it has some brighter green coloring with some gray striping along its back and tons of spikes on the top of its head. Then we'll go with this cute looking dinosaur figure right here. This looks like a baby Stygimoloch figure. It has the clay red coloring, some dark brown eyes, a ton of horns on the top of its head, and of course the hard helmet shell on the top of its head for headbutting. And let's put that right next to the Dracorex. Next up is the Calavosaurus dinosaur in the dark blue with the yellow detailing along its body. Oh, you know what? I forgot that there was another Zuniceratops figure in here. This one is in the bright green with the darker detailing along the top and on its head. And let's go ahead and put these Zuniceratops next to each other. So we gotta move this over here and put this one right in there. Next up is a four-legged herbivore. I believe this one is called a Shringosaurus. It looks pretty similar to a Stegosaurus, but it has these huge spikes along its back, and its spines look a little bit different than a Stegosaurus. And it has these little horns coming out of its front legs. And since we're almost out of room on this line, we're gonna start a new line in the front right up here. Here is another similar looking dinosaur. I can't remember the name of this one, but it has much darker coloring and these huge horns coming right out of its back. And let's get that in line right there. Next up, I've got a little Minmi dinosaur. It has these horns all over its body as protective covering, and it is one of the smallest figures I have in this collection. So let's set it next in line. And finally, let's end with this Sauropelta figure. It has those bunch of horns coming out of its side, and then the hard protective shell all along the top. And there it is, the smallest in the entire collection. And biggest dinosaur in this entire collection is this Hammond collection, Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's got an amazingly detailed body with the coloring as well as the texturing all over. It's got some amazing marbled eyes and a pretty realistic mouth too. We're gonna set that right here as the biggest dinosaur. Next up, also from the Hammond collection, is the Carnotaurus dinosaur. Also stands on two legs and has some pretty cool yellow coloring with the gray striping and a red crown on the top of its head. And here it goes, next in size. Next up in the collection is the Hammond collection Metriacanthosaurus figure. It has tan coloring with the brown striping and some dark orange along its eyes and at the front of its face too. Now let's go ahead and set that up next in size. Here is the Hammond Collection Parasaurolophus figure. It is also mostly tan colored, but it's got some purple striping and orange right along the top, and of course the huge horn on the top of its head. So now let's put this one also in line and grab our next one, which I think is the Ceratosaurus from the Hammond Collection. This dinosaur is colored pretty classically for this species. It's got the tan body with the brown striping and then the red along the back, all the way up to the face. Now let's put that in line as the next largest one, and let's grab our first Amber Collection figure, which is a Velociraptor figure. I believe this is the generic Velociraptor from the Amber Collection, so it doesn't have a name, but it has some pretty cool coloring with the bright orange and the brown striping. So now let's go ahead and put this one in line, and let's grab our next Amber Collection Velociraptor, and this one does have a name. This one is Velociraptor Charlie. This figure also has some pretty bright coloring. This one is bright green instead, and a little more faded green striping along the top. And it looks like it actually has a headpiece. I think that might be a camera, just like in the movies. So now let's get this one next in line, next to the orange Velociraptor. And here is the next Velociraptor from the Amber Collection. This is Velociraptor Delta. And the coloring on this figure is a bit different than the two that we've already seen. These two ones are more like stripes on its back, but this one has more of like speckles on its back. It does have some striping as well. So this is a really cool blue-green color. So now let's put this Velociraptor in line and grab the next Amber Collection Velociraptor, which is this one. And this is Velociraptor Echo. This Velociraptor has probably the most classic coloring out of any of these other Velociraptors, with the brown on the sides and then the black along the top. So now let's put this Velociraptor in line, and let's check out the next and one of the coolest Velociraptors. This, of course, is Velociraptor Blue. It has the iconic stripe running down from its tail all the way up to the top of its head, and it has some glowing gold eyes. Now let's set this up in line and grab our next figure, which is actually not a dinosaur, but a human. This is the Amber Collection Owen Grady figure. Looks like he's wearing the dark brown vest, blue shirt, and has a pair of jeans on. So now let's put this, very fittingly, right next to Velociraptor Blue. Next, why don't we open up a brand new one? This is the Amber Collection John Raymond Arnold figure. And check that out, it looks like it even comes with the torn off arm as well. Let's open it up. First off, here is the John Arnold figure in his lab coat. You can see a Jurassic Park logo right on his shirt, and it looks like it actually comes with a computer set for this figure. So let's check that out. Check that out. This is all one piece, and this is the computer that he was working on in the movie. Looks like there's also a headpiece that you can have for him to put on his head, just like that. And there's an extra pair of hands, and the weirdest part, but the coolest part, is this torn off arm right here. Let's check that out. Now it looks like you can't obviously put it back on the figure because it already has two arms, so it's a separate piece. But that's pretty cool. It's a funny little addition to this set. Now let's go ahead and set him up next in line, and let's grab our next Amber Collection figure, which is this Dennis Nedry figurine from the first Jurassic World movie. He's wearing a blue lab coat. It's got a blue sweater underneath and the brown pants. So now let's go ahead and set him next in line here. And next up is the famous John Hammond from the Amber Collection. And you can see that he's got his classic cane with the mosquito right on the top of it too. Now let's go ahead and set them up in line, and I had to sit these down because sadly they won't stand up on their own on this grass here. But let's grab our next dinosaur, which is this scary looking dinosaur. This is the Hammond Collection Irritator Dinosaur. It's got some really cool yellow striping, and the rest of its body is a brown color, and it's got this dark black color along its face and a bright red crown on the top of its head. And we're gonna go ahead and put that next in line, right next to John Hammond. Next, we're gonna go with the Hammond Collection Spinosaurus. But wait, this isn't actually a Spinosaurus figure. This actually used to be a Hammond Collection Baryonyx. You can see that the spine is actually custom made and put onto the figure, and the rest of the figure was repainted to look like a Spinosaurus. So we're gonna put this one next in line here. And here we go. Here is the Hammond Collection Baryonyx, the normal figure. Over here is the Spinosaurus that was remade from it. and this is the original version. It's got the dark blue coloring with the gray and the white striping, and a little bit of reflective blue coloring right underneath its eye. So now let's go ahead and set this up next in line here. For the next figure, we've got the Hammond Collection Concavinator figure. This has some really amazing coloring with the dark blue along most of its body and the orange on its tail and a little bit of red on its face. And now, since we're running out of room on this end of the table, we'll start a new line in the front right here for the next biggest dinosaur. Coming right up is the Hammond Collection Triceratops figure. This is pretty classic coloring. You can see that it's mostly brown. It has different shades of brown on different parts of its body. And a really cool part that I like is that it shows a lot of wear and tear on its horns, which I think gives a lot of detail to it. So we're gonna put that next in line, right next to the Concavinator. And here is the Hammond Collection Ankylosaurus figure. This figure is much larger compared to my regular Ankylosaurus figures, and it has some different coloring too. It's like a dark green along the top. It has the tan gray spikes and then the lighter underbelly as well. And check it out, you can even open and close its mouth. All right, now let's put that right next to the Triceratops figure. Now here is a really cool figure from the Amber Collection. This is a Pteranodon, and now it's actually got rubberized wings, so it's actually pretty flexible along its wings, whereas its body is still the hard plastic. So why don't we go ahead and put this right next to the Ankylosaurus figure. And now we're gonna open up our next new figure set. This is the Amber Collection Dimorphodons. So let's check it out. Now here is the first Dimorphodon. It looks like it is in a standing pose. You can see that its wings are flapped shut, so it's actually walking along the ground. And you can still open and close the mouth and move the neck around and all of its body parts still. And here is the other Dimorphodon. This one is in a open-winged flying pose. It's got some pretty cool shading along its back and along its wings, and you can pose basically every part of its body too. Now let's set these two down next in line. First the standing Dimorphodon, and then the open-winged flying Dimorphodon. Next up is the Hammond Collection Miniature Velociraptor figure. This one has some gray coloring with white striping and then some blue and red along the top of its head. So now let's go ahead and set that up next in line. And next I've got a Dimorphodon figure here. This one's actually pretty recent as well. Now this Dimorphodon figure actually has a removable frill, which unfortunately is a little difficult to take on and off, but it's still a pretty cool feature, and we're gonna put it right next to the Raptor. And to finish it off, I've got some of the miniature figures from the Hammond Collection. First off is the Ellie Sattler figure right here in the red sweater. There's also another Dennis Nedry figure from the Hammond Collection this time. There's the Alan Grant figure in his adventure outfit. And finally, another John Hammond figurine in the same costume.
First and largest raptor of this collection is this custom colored super colossal Endoraptor. This used to be a Velociraptor blue figure, but now it has the black with the gold stripe down its back, or the Endoraptor. For the next biggest figure is another super colossal. This is Velociraptor blue. And as you can see, these two super colossal figures are actually identical. So this one originally used to be a Velociraptor blue just like this. Moving on to our next biggest figure is this Dino Trackers Endoraptor. This is quite a new figure, and it's got a really cool reflective blue color all over it. It's also got an action button on its back to activate its jaw. And you can move the arms to twist the neck back and forth too. Next up in size, let's see, I think it's actually another Endoraptor, but this is an older figure. This is the Grab and Growl version. And this figure is pretty hard to find nowadays, so it's actually pretty rare. And on this figure, you can use the tail to open and close the jaw, to swing the arms back and forth, and to move the entire torso. Check it out, they're pretty close in size. Next up, I'm gonna be opening a brand new one. This is the Primal Pal Velociraptor Blue figure. Let's open it up. So this figure has a shorter tail than a lot of the Velociraptor figures I have, and it actually has some pretty realistic movements. You can move it side to side, it's got some sound effects, and you can push it down for a chomp action too. And let's set that right next in line. Moving right along here, I think we've got our final Endoraptor of this collection. A lot of these Endoraptors are pretty big. This is the smallest one, and it doesn't have any action buttons, but all of its limbs are still extremely posable. This next one is the basic Velociraptor Blue figure. There's not too much that you can adjust with it, but it still has movable arms, legs, and a tail. This next one is another medium-sized basic Velociraptor figure, but it has totally different coloring. It's in a bright orange and brown coloring. Next, we've got our first Atrociraptor of this collection, and this figure I actually personally custom colored. This is another basic figure from Jurassic World, so it doesn't have that many action features, but I'm really happy with how the color turned out. Check it out, here's another Atrociraptor figure. This is the basic edition, once again from Jurassic World. So let's set this down right next to the custom colored one. And here is our first Pyroraptor of this collection. This is the basic edition, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. And I think it might be a little bit smaller or actually the same size as the Atrociraptors. All right, here is the first and only Megaraptor that I have in my entire collection. This is from the Jurassic World Dominion series. It's got some huge claws on its hand, and when you press down on its back, it has a chomping action. For the next in size, let's go with the Hammond Edition Velociraptor. These raptors are pretty cool because they are super articulate with their limbs, and they have quite a bit more detail than the basic ones. And right over here is another Amber Collection Velociraptor. This one is Velociraptor Blue. Check out that blue stripe down its back. And here is the final Amber Collection Velociraptor that I have in this collection. This one is the bright green with stripes on it. And let's set that down right next in line. Next up here is a pretty old Jurassic World figure. This is one of the first Velociraptors that Jurassic World released for the first movie. And these figures have quite a hard time standing up, so let's see if we can get it to stand up in line as the next in size. All right, I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. Here is another Atrociraptor figure in the bright orange coloring, but this is actually a Rowdy Roars Atrociraptor. Let's turn on the power and let's see it come to life. All right, now we're getting down to the real small raptors. Let's open up this new Austroraptor from the Dino Tracker series. So I think this is the only Austroraptor that I have in my entire collection. And this one has a much narrower and longer snout than a lot of the Velociraptor figures I have in my collection, but it's still got some feathering on its elbows. Right over here, I've got a super bright Velociraptor figure. It's in a bright blue color, and this one is actually spring-loaded, so you can launch it up into the air. Here, let me show you how it leaps. You press down, and then you release. This next one is another spring-loaded Velociraptor, but this is in a brown and dark brown coloring. Let's check out that jumping action on this one, too. Next up, this Velociraptor figure has a slashing action. So when you push on its torso, it swings back and forth, and it's actually spring-loaded too, so it can be pretty fast. All right, let's set this down next in line. This next one is a darker colored Velociraptor, and it has a different feature. There's a button on its back that you can use for a slashing action. Next, we've got our final Atrociraptor figure of this collection, and this is a battle damage edition. There is a button on its back that you can use to activate the battle damage on the side. And since we're out of space on the very end of the table, let's start a new line up front here. This next figure is a newer Velociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got a darker body with some bright detailing on the top. This next raptor is a really cool colored velociraptor. Check out that green speckled detailing on the top of its body. And let's set that down right there. Here's a different looking Velociraptor blue figure. This might actually be Velociraptor Beta because it does look quite a bit younger. Now this is an amazingly colored Velociraptor. Check out that reflective gold right on its head. And let's put that next in line. All right, only 2 left. This next one is another Pyroraptor figure, but this one is in a battle damage edition with a button on the top to open and close the battle damage. And the final raptor in this biggest to smallest collection is this click tracker, Atrociraptor. So after you turn it on, you use the remote and it follows the sound. Let's check that out. It's pretty cool. I like that it's motorized.
First biggest T-Rex is this super colossal T-Rex from Jurassic World. This T-Rex has a bright orange body with a darker brown top. And just like all my super colossal figures, it can swallow miniature dinosaurs down its throat to the stomach compartment that you can open it up. My next biggest T-Rex is this super colossal Jurassic Park T-Rex. This is actually from Jurassic World Dominion. It has a much darker body. It's got black on top, brown on the sides, and a lighter underbelly. It's got a huge jaw, and this figure can also swallow miniature dinosaurs and open them up in the stomach compartment. Next up, we've got a Jurassic Park T-Rex. I believe this T-Rex was called the Bull T-Rex. And this figure too can swallow miniature dinosaurs and other small stuff, and you can empty it out in the stomach compartment. Right on top here, we've got the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex. This figure has some of the coolest coloring out of all the T-Rexes that I have, and it is remarkably adjustable too. You can bend the legs in all different directions, at the knees, at the ankles. You can bend the arms, you can twist the neck, and you can open the mouth, of course. Next, I've got this huge Jurassic World T-Rex with this ginormous head. This figure has the black top and brown sides, just like the super colossal T-Rex from Jurassic World Dominion. And this T-Rex can be controlled by moving the tail around. Back here, we've got, I believe, what is called the Terran T-Rex or something like that. The special feature on this T-Rex is the tearing action with its mouth. It swings its head around and closes it at the same time. And it's got a secondary action button to swing the tail around too. This T-Rex, also from Jurassic World, is a stompin' T-Rex. When you twist the tail, it stomps its legs up and down. And it has those cool sound effects too. Plus, as you notice with the cage, it actually breaks free from the cage just by pressing the button on its back. That is pretty cool. Here we've got another Jurassic Park T-Rex. So this is a very old figure. It's got the rubber body, and with this T-Rex figure, you can move the tail to swing the head back and forth. So it's not as advanced as the new Jurassic World T-Rexes, but it's still pretty cool. We've got tons more T-Rexes to go. Let's keep digging. This huge T-Rex with similar coloring as the first super colossal T-Rex that we saw has some pretty cool functions. When you swing the tail, it swings its head back and forth, and it has a roar function when you move the tail, and a chomping action. All just by moving the tail. That is pretty cool. Over here, we've got a darker gray colored T-Rex with some brown on the top. This is also by Jurassic World, and you can twist the neck around, you can open the jaw, there's a button on top, activate the chomping, and you can swivel the tail around and move the legs as well. I think this one's bigger than the rest of them. This T-Rex has one of my favorite functions. It's actually battery operated, so that when you press the button on its tail, it opens its mouth and shakes. It actually has a motor in it to do that, which is pretty cool. Plus, you can move the tail around to swing its neck around to look. That's really cool. This T-Rex was custom colored a long time ago. It's got the bright green on the side, and it's got like camo colors and black all over the rest of its body with the lighter underbelly. And just like that bright orange T-Rex we saw just a second ago, you can control chomping and roaring with this figure just by moving the tail around. Next up, we've got a light brown T-Rex from Jurassic World. This is very similar in function to the darker gray figure that we just saw. It has the chomping button on the top of its head. You can move its neck around, and you can adjust the rest of its body parts too. This is the extreme battle damage T-Rex from Jurassic World. It's got some different patterning along the top of its body compared to the rest of them, but the most important part is the battle damage on both sides that you can press this button up top to turn it on and off. Plus, the rest of the figure is very adjustable as well. Here's another T-Rex with some battle damage on it. It doesn't have the extreme battle damage on the side that you can turn on and off, but it does have these slashes all over its body, even its legs and its tail too. The rest of the figure is very adjustable, and of course, the button at the top of the head for chomping. Next up, we've got another custom colored T-Rex. This one is a super bright red color. Looks kind of like fire in my opinion, and it's got the black on the top and the orange striping right along the sides. And this figure is adjustable just like many of the other figures that I've shown so far too. Next up, we've got another bright orange T-Rex with the brown top. This figure is fully adjustable throughout its body, and it's got the chomp button at the top of its head. Here's one of my favorite T-Rexes. This is a dark green color, and I'm not sure that I have any other green colored T-Rexes in my collection, so this one's pretty special to me. It's also got the black detailing along the top, and its body is fully adjustable with the legs, tail, arms, and neck, and there's the button at the top of its head for chomping. Let's keep going, we still got quite a few T-Rexes to go. This T-Rex is from the old Jurassic World toy line. It's got a rubberized neck, so it's a bit flexible there, as well as the rubberized tail. And it has a chomping action with the tail. Now we're getting down to some slightly smaller T-Rex figures. This is a Jurassic World T-Rex, and it is actually a hybrid. It's got some spikes on the top of its head that you can push down and activate them by pressing the button on its back. Here is another custom colored T-Rex from the old Jurassic World toy line. It is bright red in color with black spots all over and the yellow underbelly. And it also has a chomping action on its back. Here's another similar T-Rex from the old Jurassic World toy line. This T-Rex is light tan in color all over its body. It's a little bit lighter on its belly. And just like the other two that we just saw, it has the chomping action button on its back. All right, this next T-Rex is a little bit smaller. This is a Jurassic Park T-Rex. I believe it's a juvenile T-Rex, and it's actually got some battle damage right on the side. Next up, we've got a new Jurassic World Dominion figure. This, I believe, is the Sound Surge T-Rex. It's pretty small in size, and you have to open and close its jaw manually, but it does come with some awesome sound effects. And we've got some model T-Rexes in here. I'm not sure what brand this is from, and you can't move any of the limbs or the jaw on this figure, but it's got the dark brown coloring. It's got some interesting shading and black stripes all over its body. Here is another dark brown model T-Rex, but on this one you can open and close its jaw. It's also got the black stripes and the lighter underbelly too. Check out that little bit of yellow right there on its nose. It's interesting. Here is a dark green model T-Rex. This one you cannot move any of its body parts, so it is standing in this awesome roaring pose, just like I'm sure you've seen in the movies. Here is a bright orange or red model T-Rex. With this figure you can open and close the jaw, check out all those little teeth, and this figure looks quite a bit more muscular than a lot of the T-Rexes, I will say. Here is a super bright model T-Rex. It's got the bright blue along the top of its body, as well as the gold stripes. It's got a gray underbelly and some teal coloring right along its face. Here is a darker model T-Rex. I love the attention to detail with the skin. It's like you can see all these little bumps all over its body. It's got the black stripes as well. And on this model, you can open and close its mouth. Here is a super striped T-Rex. This has some really bold black stripes right along the top of its body, while the rest of its body is this soft tan or orange color. And it's got some super bright yellow eyes too. And unfortunately, you cannot move any of the body parts on this model. Next up, we've got a light green colored T-Rex with some darker shading and detailing along its body. You can see those bumps right along its spine. And this figure does not have any moving parts either. So it is stuck in this roaring pose. We've got some even smaller T-Rexes in here. Here is a Jurassic World T-Rex that is pretty small. It's probably 7 inches from tail to the nose, and it fits easily in my hand. It's got some battle damage on the side, and the tail controls the jaw and face. We've actually got a few more Jurassic World T-Rexes just like that last one. This first one is actually a hybrid T-Rex. It is a hybrid with a Dilophosaurus, as you can tell by these huge frills in the front. It's still got the battle damage on the side, and it's got this reflective gold along the top of its body and the very front too. And this T-Rex has a bright green body. It's got the battle damage on the side still, and some darker detailing right along its face. This T-Rex figure is from Jurassic Park, so this is a super old figure. It's got some interesting purple detailing along the top. It's got a tan body, and actually, this figure has a unique feature on the leg. You can actually bend it like that, because it is a broken leg for this T-Rex. Right over here, we've got another juvenile T-Rex. This one has a bandage on its leg and the restraint on its mouth, so it can't bite people. It is super bright green with some cool detailing along the back and is very adjustable with all of its limbs too. This baby T-Rex is also from Jurassic World. It is bright green or yellow in color with some detailing along the top, and when you pull down on the tail, it chomps its jaws shut. All right, we've got some super small T-Rexes in here. I believe this one is from Jurassic World. I'm not sure actually, but they are both brown in color. This one is very adjustable. You can even move the tail around, you can move the legs and open and close the jaw. But this figure doesn't have any moving parts actually. And our last two T-Rexes of this collection from biggest to smallest. We've got a bright blue T-Rex with black stripes and no movable body parts. And this T-Rex here, you can move the legs, you can twist the tail around, and you can open and close the jaw too.
Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.